O'Connor method is a sequence of specific American tunes. American tunes in a variety of styles, keys, tempos, cultures, and eras to best teach technique and creativity together. A student can acquire technique and creativity simultaneously on the violin, viola, cello, and double bass at the beginning levels. Hello everybody, welcome to the O'Connor Method Seminar. I'm glad you're all here, and it's great to be able to share what I've learned and what I've written with you today. Give you a little bit about my background and how I began. One of my favorite people on earth, Benny Thomason, and he was the great Texas fiddler. He's probably one of the greatest creative fiddlers America had ever produced. And he took me under his wing when I was 11. Here in this picture, I'm 13. Little gray eagle. My other principal mentor was Stefan Grappelli, the great jazz violinist, probably one of the greatest of all time. I auditioned for his group when I was just 17. We would play stuff like this. Started my own jazz group I called Hot Swing. My string quartet. My collaborations with some of the greatest musicians of our time, Yo-Yo Ma, and with Wynton Marsalis. Let's see. And then I've worked a lot with orchestra, including youth orchestra, as we see here with the Boston Youth Orchestra. I'm probably one of the few violinists in history who's composed a symphony. The first couple of rows are albums released when I was a teenager, essentially. The next couple of rows are my Warner Brothers albums. And the rows after that are my Sony classical years. And the last two rows are releases on my own label over the last 10 years. I started my summer string camps 20 years ago. They have taken place around the country. The Berklee College of Music in Boston. I've held some in New York City, gathering incredible amounts of students and all-star faculty. And with these camps, I've put together what I call the 4 pillars of string playing: Western classical, folk music, jazz, and world music. And when I started this concept 20 years ago, many people couldn't believe that it would work, that there would be the same types of students interested in going to a camp like that to share in those experiences. There was a common interest in string playing by so many. This is a shot early on in the Fiddle camp in Tennessee. These young kids have gone on to do some great things. She went on to NEC, and she just won the Naumburg Prize. And this young lady right here, just right to my right, has turned into a singer-songwriter and still plays her fiddle and plays with Willie Nelson. So these are the kinds of string students that have been coming through my camp. Over the years, over 20 years, we've seen 5,000 unique enrollments, 5,000 different students. Took it up a notch and started hitting the conservatories, universities, and music schools with my residencies. American classical violin repertoire, from traditional fiddle tunes to ragtime, jazz, and blues, my own caprices and improvisations. And I've done these residencies around the country and around the world. From my experiences at my camps, teaching there, and also my own experiences of teaching when I was younger. When I was 12 years old, I had a whole studio of students. And I taught children some of these ages. I also taught kids my age at 12 and 13. People like the king of country music, Roy Acuff, awarding me that Grand Masters Championship in 1975. I was just 13 there. Even these masters were asking me how I played, how I could do the things that I did on the violin, teaching and sharing music before I was even out of high school. And along the way, I accumulated a list of what turned out to be the principles of my method. And these are the things that instructed me to be able to become the musician that I am. Listening, practice, progression, exercising, performance, relevance, creativity, and expression. And each of those things has a very valuable place in American music, and certainly my own American music journey. These are some of the foundations that I used to start putting the method together. I've released Method Book 1 and 2 for violin, Viola and Cello Book 1, and Orchestra Book 1 and 2. Book 1 for orchestra is designed for grade school students, and Book 2 is designed for middle school and high school. The combination of these things, more than Western classical music or more than just folk music or world music or jazz, I'm referring to now as the New American School of String Playing and the American System. I concentrate heavily on music and literature from America, Canada, and Mexico. And there's some histories of the music right there, some individual pages right out of the method for you. 3- and 4-year-olds learning the violin. How can violin be more creative for young students while still acquiring good technical skills? the American School of String Playing. My first tune is a 400-year-old song called Boil 'em Cabbage Down in A major. This tune sets the hand in playing position. Each note represents a different chord. It is an infectious melody only using half of a scale, withstanding many repeats, stays on one string, and is inherently rhythmic. So the early rhythmic variations are completely natural and idiomatic to the artistry of the piece of music. So the very first note of the piece is with the second finger, the tallest finger, so it automatically frames the hand in position. Wonderful way to get started. The second note of the tune is third finger, back to the second finger, and then the first finger is the first time that the hand could go out of frame. If you start off in a disciplined way, you can often carry that discipline through the whole first part of this. Because it's very difficult to not play with a nice frame playing with the second finger. If a piece starts with an open string, it's very difficult to start one way and then adapt as you get going. The entire tune takes place on one string, and the entire tune is only half a scale, so we don't even need the A major scale before we can play music. It only goes up to the fourth degree of the scale. This tune is organically rhythmic, so rhythmic variations seem very comfortable. It has a very short structure. The shorter the structure early on, the more imagination that the student will have towards the music. They'll feel an ownership of the music and make it their own. The second song, Beautiful Skies, is in A major, introduces one new technical skill to add to the skill set acquired by the first tune, the string cross. An introduction to the fifth degree of the scale, and the melody allows the string cross from open to open. It also continues the descending scale passages featured in Cabbage, now using the whole scale, which is more desirable than ascending passages in the beginning stages to ensure the hand set and frame in place. It is also a different tempo, a different mood, and it allows the child to find a beautiful sound early on by falling in love with this little piece. The beautiful altered harmony in the piano accompaniment makes kids feel like they are doing something special early on. Beautiful Skies. So Beautiful Skies is a very small structure again. The children can work on the string cross without having to worry about intonation at that point in the piece. Open. It's built right into the melody. And it repeats it right away. Many of the pieces that I've chosen for the method suggest exercises within the music. The melodies are very strong, that it doesn't feel like and sound like an exercise. Descending scales. You can frame the hand and come off down to the first. And there's another look at a string cross, but this time from open to a finger note. a whole scale. A major scale is for Beautiful Skies. Creatively, I love what Boil 'em Cabbage Down does going into Beautiful Skies. Typically, the beginners will spend a lot of time on Boil 'em Cabbage Down. We have 3 variations of it at the beginning. They'll be only experiencing the 4th degree of the scale for quite a while. So when they finally get to Beautiful Skies, that 5th degree of the scale is like a present, a gift of Americana, that open interval that we love so much. This music is very easy to come up with accompaniment parts, even on your string instrument. For instance, in Beautiful Skies, learn the chords. As a teacher, learn these chords. These chords will be above the level that the kids will understand, but they're also there for you, for older siblings, for parents, and older students to look at and realize what the chords are and play along. If we learn these chords in Beautiful Skies, for instance, they can sound like this. And the way it develops on the string instrument, you can play the melody at the same time you play the chords. So you can play that along with your young student. And that combination of sounds will be very beautiful. It will remind them of Beautiful Skies. Another gift to the method is from the old tune, Old Joe Clark, a very strong melodic phrase that introduces low twos in combination with high twos on the adjacent string. The students learn low two, but they do not forget high two. The modal nature of the melody line is so strong and substantive that it wills the young student to the low two because they want to play and participate in that attractive modal key representing Americana music. Here we use the modal key stylistically to create a wonderful pedagogical tool. One of the great things about this tune, there's a huge struggle to learn the low two for string students. The low two does not replace the high two. We still have it in the phrase. Every phrase of the piece. High two on an adjacent string, so it's easier to compartmentalize. Low two on the E string, high two on the A string. This is a wonderful tune. I played this tune in a jam session at the University of Miami where I teach. And I had all even the graduate students playing this tune. We must have played it for about 10 or 15 minutes, just those two parts. And people were jamming on it. It's a great feeling. Really adult, professional type of music. They have a long history, and they're performed regularly on stage around the world. And the children sense that when they're learning. They feel like they're learning, real grown-up tunes. And they'll be able to play for a long time in different iterations. All these tunes are really fun for teachers also to accompany. You can practice your improvisation while the kids are learning, and they'll get the benefit of playing with you, so you can have a group session right in your solo lesson. For instance, Ojo Clark, you can kind of chord along at the bottom. Those two parts really go well together. Another magical gift of an American style is boogie woogie, which allows the student to feel like they're really grooving and swinging, but never having to actually swing the notes, which is introduced late in Method Book 2 through the brilliance of ragtime, allowing us to swing notes. However, playing the boogie woogie early on in Book 1, completely straight, is the goal. In the method, we allow the magical and even mysterious aspects of music to aid us into hooking the students into music. This piece reinforces a strong look at the low 2 again, the modal key, and rhythmic playing. The amazing thing about the boogie woogie is that it feels like you're swinging and really grooving, but with this type of phrase, you don't have to swing. You can just play the notes, the eighth notes, as straight as you can. Kids don't have to learn how to swing to really feel like they're playing rhythmically. And teachers can accompany. I've got a duet in the method. But you can also kind of comp. So we can turn our string instruments into guitars, which would be, I think, a handy thing to be able to do, especially in our culture since guitar is so popular. It goes to show you how flexible the violin can be. Later on in Book 1, the beautiful and lyrical Johnny Has Gone for a Soldier, something we refer to as the minor miracle. The minor key is beautiful to children when they finally get to experience it. In most methods, it is fraught with dealing with the most frustrating of technical acquisitions in the beginning level, the low first finger. So rather than wait to the poignancy of the minor key and match it up with one of the great struggles in technique, I introduced the minor tune arranged in the key of F sharp minor. So the hand shape required is the same hand shape used in the key of A major, the relative major, the same key signature. The tune is enjoyed while the children can allow the minor tonality to inspire them in new ways for this first time that they get to play the minor mode. Everything is familiar, yet it is a different tonality to the young person's ear. When we visit the minor key for the second time in Book 2, that is when we dive into the low 1, D minor, and G minor tunes are featured then. The low 1s in Book 2, like with Gypsy Fantastic, we're already aware of the minor tonality. Gypsy Fantastic features the low one. And you notice that I go to the low one 12 different times. So it really becomes an exercise, even though the tune is very, very robust and catchy. The second part of the tune Gypsy Fantastic is also featured as a duet in the method. There's duets that occasionally will appear throughout the books. The duet aspect of the method allows older siblings to play with their younger siblings if their levels are different. When I was a child learning how to play, my younger sister was also learning to play the violin, and my mother wanted me to play with her. If I had some duets like this, and she would have benefited from that too. In Book 2, I introduced the Florida Blues and the half-step slide, music styles such as rock, jazz, R&B, and bluegrass, and so many other styles of American music. And so we learned this with Florida Blues. Being able to slide between the minor third and the major third is really a quintessential American sound, and kids are really drawn to that technique. In El Rancho Grande, I introduced the chop for the first time rhythmically. You know, so you can comp along with the chop. The hair of the bow near the frog into the string and resting it there. Then the hair off the string that makes a little tiny sound is the and of the beat. And this kind of chop and rhythm can be brought forward in group class, in jam sessions. So getting the kids to arrange music without having to necessarily improvise yet, they can trade off parts. Some can play rhythmic part while the other kids play lead. I have a section in the method books that shows the setup, and I call it Feeling the Violin. And feeling the viola. And you'll notice that these pictures, the kids in playing position, but other photos have the children lovingly carrying their instruments. Children to find an affection towards these instruments. The more the student holds their instrument naturally, the more they think about it as a part of their life. There's a picture of the cellist and really hugging the cello, plucking the strings. Throughout the method, there's musical terms that we can learn. Instructions about musical notation, tone and sound, and the layout of the books and the concept mapping is very important. Creative string players are improvisers, arrangers, composers, and band leaders. One of the reasons why I wanted to produce a method on string playing is that I felt during our era we have fewer improvisers, arrangers, and composers and band leaders on string instruments than in the history of the instrument. I've laid out a method to learn how to play the violin starting from the very beginning. It is no longer possible to imagine that string players are going to really absorb this musical language like they could have if they had it earlier. One of the reasons why I felt so strongly about string music education is that we start the kids so early. American music and its history has fascinating and rich traditions that are very accessible to children. The histories of the music is very important, and that is a feature of my method. Historical photos, illustrations, and the history that I've researched on each of the pieces of music. In this example, there's some history about early jazz violin. Stefan Grappelli, my teacher, along with his first partner, Django Reinhardt. African-American Eddie South, pictured there. They performed together in the 1930s. An aspect of the method includes lyric variations. This is an example of We Shall Overcome, a spiritual in Book 3. Songs are fiddle tunes, and fiddle tunes are songs. So children can easily sing this music as a tradition of singing. There's old Joe Clark, and there's the little fiddle boy commenting about old Joe Clark. Singing the music when you're young or at any time when you're learning is a wonderful thing because we want to be able to phrase as a vocalist, singing and playing together. Oh, Susanna, oh, Susanna, don't you cry for me. I come from Alabama with my banjo on my knee. Oh, Susanna, don't you cry for me. I come from Alabama with my banjo on my knee. Bringing those two elements of music making together, and this is part of the tradition in the American system, singing and playing, unlocking the power of creativity, planting the seeds for improvisation. I wrote an essay called 20 Points of Creativity for the O'Connor Method, Book 1. All of these things presenting creativity in a way that young students can understand and start to apply into their musical lessons. These are ways that we can work with 3, 4, 5, 6-year-olds. We want them to learn how to play the violin. With the American system comes fascinating connections to creativity. On each of these 20 points, you can read my essay online. 1, American song structures. 2, musical variation. 3, playing other parts of the music, experiential variety. 4, voicing counterpoint. 5, textural variation. 6, rhythmical feel and groove. 7, tuning your notes to chords. 8, variety, keys, tonalities. 9, theoretical knowledge. 10, American musical language, mother tongue. 11, many American styles. 12, music of different eras. 13, musical histories. 14, diversity and American democracy. 15, find your expression. 16, context, formal and informal settings. 17, bridging solo and ensemble repertoire. 18, multifaceted mentoring. 19, visual stimulation, layout and mapping. 20, going green. The orchestra book 1 looks like this. These are a couple of individual pages from the score. It's made up of 3 staves for violin, for viola, and for cello. And there's the potential to double the viola on second violin and to double the cello on double bass. There's an optional piano part that can be added to the music or taken away. It's perfectly fine with it or without it. I orchestrated and scored it that way. The children will experience counterpoint and harmony in group and early orchestra right from the very beginning. This concept is to promote harmony, finding chords and counterpoint from the beginning and not playing in unison. There's an example of Boogie Woogie, and you can see that all 3 staves are equally weighted. There's equal amounts of activity, and I orchestrated it in a way where the second stave or the third stave sounds melodic. Orchestra Book 2, I've orchestrated it differently. This has full symphonic strings, 5 parts. First violin, second violin, viola, cello, and bass. And this is for middle school and high school levels. So Orchestra Book 1, 3 staves, so young children can hear the other parts of the music more easily than being confused and overwhelmed with too many things going on at the beginning. Many children that are playing in unison in group class for years, their first experience that they'll have playing with a large amount of people will be in orchestra, probably at middle school or a youth orchestra. And there's so many parts going on at the same time, it's overwhelming. And many young children just simply tune out. There are 4 foundational genres of music that make up the American system. The first one is the hoedown. The hoedown is very old, 400 years. Immigrants started coming here and bringing the violin. And the hoedown was a shared music created from the melting pot that was already happening in the South. European immigrants, Native Americans, and African Americans passing around the violin. Arkansas Traveler with me improvising on it. I take the hoedown as a foundational language and use it for modern composition. I'll give you an excerpt of my American Seasons. Here's an example of a hoedown as a part of my second violin concerto. The second foundational music is blues. And blues goes way back a few hundred years as well in the American system. Now I'm going to improvise on the Florida Blues. With the blues, you can also use it as a foundational language for new composition. Anniversary. The third foundational genre for American music is the spiritual. And then with the spiritual, you can use this wonderful language for modern American composition, Appalachian Waltz. The fourth and final language that I feel is very instructive to all American music is ragtime. And ragtime is very, very natural to the violin, just like the spiritual and the blues and the hoedown. For ragtime, I introduce it through dill pickle. Improvising on dill pickle rag. So ragtime is a great foundation for so many compositional styles, something out of my double violin concerto. The cornerstones of learning musical creativity, these are the guiding principles that I used in how I went about mapping the book. First, the acquisition of skills. In doing so, I wanted to create a relationship to other arts and disciplines. So you'll find that the pictures and the photos, the colors, the text, some of the illustrations, Fiddle Boy, humor, the history, the logical sequencing for acquisition of tonal and rhythmic concepts, musical development, conceptual musical understanding, and skill development are interrelated. The idea that you know more about your little tune by looking at the picture and understanding some of the history about it read to you by the parent or the teacher helps in musical development. The conceptual understanding can direct the technical and expressive aspects of musical performance. Finding meaning is a key concept development. Acquisition of mental representations is central to musical understanding. The organizational aspect of the materials influences the processing and retention of information. The perceptual units or chunks on the page allowing emergent properties to become evident. This example out of Book 3, the presentation changes during the method as the knowledge base increases. The longer histories, the more elaborate exercises, more ear training, more bow and finger development. The perceptual principles and logical sequencing of materials influences the musical development. encourages a variety of effective approaches to practice. So I'm looking at different ways for the child to practice. Perhaps they will want to share some aspect of their book with a friend. My rainbow, which is something I devised when I was consistently looking for ways to tie in natural habitat with music making. And I realized one day that there were 7 colors in the rainbow and 7 intervals in the scale. And we can use the rainbow to understand theory by having the red as the first degree. The major triad, of course, is 1, 3, and 5, the first, third, and fifth interval of the scale. And the primary colors are the first color, third color, and fifth color of the rainbow. In the key of A, red, yellow would be the third color, and that would be the fifth color. In order to make the second color and the fourth color of the rainbow, you have to blend the primary colors. And I often think about musical intervals like that. The note between the first and third interval could be a passing tone. So that's a real substantial note and a journey. Same with going from the third interval to the fifth. And the sixth and seventh intervals are the most complex. The seventh being the most. And then you're home again, the red. And it just so happens that the 6th degree and 7th degree of the rainbow are the most complex colors of the rainbow, indigo and violet. There are stories of how music and our natural habitat connect from a musical child's perspective. And Fiddle Boy becomes a little buddy that shows up in the first couple of books. As he meets Mozart, they organize a jam session. Mozart says, "Hi, Fiddle Boy, I really like the music from your country. Back when I was composing, we never could have imagined your American hoedowns, blues, spirituals, ragtime, mariachi polkas, jazz, Texas swing, Canadian jigs, bluegrass, and rock and roll." And then Fiddle Boy says, "It's an honor to meet you, Mozart. I read somewhere that you could improvise on the violin and that you were really good at it. We have a lot more music to come. You are sure welcome to stick around and play and improvise with me and the students in the American Music Jam Session." Copeland used a hoedown that was written by William Stepp, a fiddler from Kentucky. The tune actually came from this man, William Stepp, which I write about in the method. But he tuned his first string down, and it made all the sense in the world on the second part of the tune. And then the tuning involved a low drone. But Copeland was not going to be able to get the string players of the orchestra to go down that far. But Copeland loved the idea of the droned string. So because of this sort of kind of convergence of ideas and cultures, Copeland comes up with one of the great sounds of his American classical music, the 4/1. So you know the genesis of that came from the low droned D string, tuned all the way down. This is our new brochure with the latest books available at Shar Music. O'Connor Method Camps in the summer. CDs now that are associated with the method. American Classics is the music from Violin Book 3, and the new America on Strings is Orchestra Book 2. These recordings are beautifully done, and the music resonates with a lot of people, and hopefully with you. Thank you very much.